Today I want to talk about architecture, specifically what a IT architect does in the industry. So what is an architect? An IT architect in general is going to be working on the architecture of the company's IT systems and integrations. And I think that's kind of obvious. But what is the architecture then within the IT context? Architecture is what makes up all of the systems, services, and the integrations that a company has in its IT. So everything from the storefront or the e-commerce site to the data warehouse where all of the company's data is stored long term. And all the integrations to third-party services like payments and Google Analytics and what have you. All of that makes up the architecture of a company. So what an architect does then is that they are responsible, at least part of the responsible team or group of people that have the responsibility of the company architecture. So they make sure that not only does everything work as expected, but they also solve the business values and business problems. They make sure that the systems solve these problems that the business has and provides value to the business. And they do this by working quite tightly, depending on which specific architecture role you do have, with business and stakeholders to understand those needs and the requirements that the business has on IT. Then they make these decisions and provide solutions to the different parts of the IT organization to execute on, to be able to deliver on the requirements from the business. So in a nutshell, they talk to business, understand what they need, then they come up with the solution, how to provide that, and give that solution to a set of teams to build and maintain. But that's quite the simplification, because there are different types of architects that work at different levels of the organization with different scopes when it comes to the technology stack. But now that you have the general understanding of what an architect like me actually does, let's look at the different IT architect roles that do exist in the tech industry. And to group these roles together, you can divide them up in different areas of focus, if you want to call it that. That's the focus of the architecture on their day-to-day operations, or the architect's day-to-day focus. The areas of focus that we usually talk about, at my work at least, is business, operations, technology, and solution. And of course there are synonyms for these, like technology can also often be called developer, and solution can also be called vendor, but in the end they all mean the same thing. So the first one, business focused architects, are focused on goals of the business, obviously, and how the architecture helps the business reach those goals. They're very close to the business and work on strategy, long-term decisions, usually towards a target architecture. An example of roles for these business-focused architects are enterprise architect, chief architect, or business architect. The difference between these roles vary in my experience, but they might be a bit self-explanatory. Business architect focuses more on the processes and the solutions to improve and grow the business. An enterprise architect has the most overarching view of the organization's architecture and will help businesses understand the capabilities that they have with the architecture that they do have in place. And a chief architect is quite similar to enterprise one, I say, but it's usually more administrative, but also more exploratory in terms of finding new technologies to invest in, while also making sure that all architectural ventures are aligned with the business needs. The operations architects their primary focus is to align the operations of the business and their resources and capabilities with the digital infrastructure of the business. That is, they focus on making sure that operations have the systems and capabilities required to do their job. Some examples of roles in this focused area of operations are cloud architects, security architects, site reliability architects. Again, these roles might be a bit self-explanatory, but to shortly describe them as well, a cloud architect works on aligning the business goals and needs with its cloud solution and engagements. Meaning, as a cloud architect, you are responsible for making sure that the cloud solutions your company has in place help solve their needs and goals in the best way possible. So for example, AWS, if you're using that at your company, a cloud architect would be responsible to make sure that they are using AWS and all the different services that they have in the most optimal way from all different perspectives, cost, performance, value delivery, and so on. that also helps them reach their goals and their needs. The security architect is responsible for the security structures around an organization's IT systems and processes. You focus on the potential vulnerabilities in systems and hardware and regularly test them for weaknesses, as well as help create the processes and structure to protect the organization from things like malware, hacking, and other malicious activities. So it's a security expert sort of, but on an architectural level. And a site reliability architect, for example, site reliability architect is responsible for, much like a site reliability engineer, if you've heard that, by the way, is they're responsible for the monitoring systems of the IT infrastructure. So they work on performance, data analysis, and discovering potential issues and areas of improvement to help them business, in the end, of course, reach the goals in the best way possible. So they will look at all these systems that we have in place, hardware and software, where there might be bottlenecks and issues, and figure out how to best improve them, or just throw it back at the team who built it and say that this is not okay, you should be doing better, sort of. The third focused area is the technology architecture, or technology architects. And these architects focus on the technical decisions that affect the business and its goals, essentially. They are responsible for making sure that the company, the software that the company builds and or buys will help the business reach their goals in the best way possible. So your focus is much more on the software and the technology stack side of the operations. So some examples of roles, again, is software architect, that's me, application architect, and or data architect. And a software architect and an application architect are both very similar. They focus on software on a deep level in terms of how to make the best decision on design of the software and the systems that we build, and which technologies to use to reach the business goals. An application architect might focus more on like specific single applications, while a software architect is much more overarching, but in general, it really depends on the organization. A data architect focuses instead on how the organization's IT systems support the strategy in terms of data. So they're responsible for designing, implementing, and maintaining how a company both acquires, stores, and queries and secures its data and its infrastructure, essentially. I hope that makes sense. Essentially, they're responsible for the data and how we use it at a company. Finally, there is the solution-focused architects, or if you want, vendor-focused. And these architects focus on one or several products or solutions to design systems to achieve business goals. Usually you focus more on like vendor products, like third-party products. So that's why you usually use the term vendor architects. That could be AWS, GCP, Salesforce, what have you. So some examples of that is, of course, a solution architect or a technical architect. They're both very similar, much like an application and a software architect. In my experience, at least, where you have a very deep knowledge and experience of different solutions and products, like vendor products, for example, where you choose one or more to solve the business goals or needs. The difference varies sometimes. Sometimes one is closer to the end user than the other, but yeah, they're generally very similar. So these are the most popular roles and main areas of focus for our IT architects as of today, but things obviously change as technology and the world changes. But to summarize what an architect does within the tech industry is that they are responsible for aligning the different technological decisions and processes that the business has in place to ensure that they solve the business goals. How and what you do varies depending on your role and the areas of focus, but that's the gist of it. So I hope you found this insightful, helpful, or at least somewhat entertaining as I'm rambling about my own experiences and insights on IT architecture. Are you yourself looking to become an architect, perhaps? You're looking to take the next step in your career? Just let me know in the comments where you're at if you are a software engineer looking to become an architect, because I have my own experiences and there are definitely pros and cons to the role. But again, yeah, thanks so much for watching and I will see you in the next one.